Welcome to another episode of the Popko Project Podcast. Today I am joined by Kristian Riley. Buddy, what's up?
How's it going? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Now, you are. I'm going to preface this interview with this, just not to discredit what you're currently doing, but for viewers and listeners, you were a part of a pretty big band from the '90s called Citizen King.
True story. I'll put pretty in quotes.
Well, I mean, I don't think you could turn on the radio back in the '90s and not hear Better Days.
Yeah, it was we got a lot of mileage out of that song for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the minute you said that, because you reached out, and how did you find me, by the way?
I pay attention to a lot of music stuff. I'm out there doing music things, and as it happens with social media, things come across my plate, and I pay attention. So
Love that. Love
yeah,
that.
I've been following you for a while, actually.
That's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've been at it for a while, and sometimes it seems like, why am I doing this? Because it purely is a passion project. I have a
Cool.
couple sponsors, which is cool, but it's not paying my any bills, that's for sure.
But you're pursuing something that's interesting to you. So
Yeah, I mean, I love music. I've loved music since I could remember. I started my career in an Entertainment Weekly newspaper. It was all about arts and entertainment, and I have zero ability to play an instrument or write a song and things like that. So this is my way of forcing myself into music, and I'm just very passionate about music and trying to spread the word about cool music. So that's why I do it.
well, we appreciate that.
Yeah, well, you don't need my help. You've done a lot, and we're gonna get into
Uh,
all that. We're gonna get
Some
into all
things.
that. Yeah, you've done some cool stuff. You have a cool project you're working on now, and you were super casual about, like, you reached out and you said, "Oh yeah, there's this record label and production, and I have this band I have now." And we talked back and forth, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you kind of dropped that whole Citizen King thing on me. And the minute I saw Better Days, I'm like, "Wait a minute, the Better Days that I know?" I'm like, "Holy shit!"
Yeah, that's cool. Thanks for saying that.
Yeah.
We, everyone in the band, we don't really talk about it much. So I don't think anyone's, like we broke up a long time ago.
Mhm.
But it's kind of like long forgotten in some
Sure.
ways, but a lot of people know the song, which is interesting. In fact, a lot of people misappropriate the song Better Days and think it was a different band. So the question is, which band did you think it was?
Me personally?
Yeah, some people think
Oh,
it was Sublime that wrote that
oh
song.
no, I started singing it immediately.
Well, I know the song, but I'm
Oh, okay.
saying like who the
No,
artist
no, that
was. Like
was
people because yeah, for those who don't know, we were a bit of a one-hit wonder. So we had kind of had the big splash and then we kind of just pieced out. So,
hey, at least you got it right.
absolutely, I'm really grateful for my experience in that band. It
Yeah.
was amazing.
So anyone who is discovering you now, who is Kristian Riley in 2026?
So these days, I produce for other artists, do production and mixing. This is my studio that I work out of, and I'm also playing in a band called Bandy, and we recently released our debut full length album.
And that's what I heard first before you dropped the Citizen King thing on me. I was like, this is really cool too.
Thank you, appreciate
Yeah.
it. Yeah, Bandy's been around for about 7 years. We
Yeah, a
haven't
little
had
while. Yeah.
Yeah, we had an EP out in 2019, and then we kind of lagged making that LP, which is part of the reason it's called Slow Down, because we took like 5 years making it. But very, very proud of that record and my involvement in the band. I wasn't originally playing in the band. I started my label, Yard Lights Records, to put out the EP. And I sort of just started that as to have a platform to release music. That's why I started it. And so I produced the EP, played a little bit of guitar on it and stuff, a little bit of writing too, but had no plans of being in the band. And then that kind of happened later. So
Yeah.
now I'm playing in the band live now. Yeah, I play guitar.
Did they just see what you're capable of and like, yo, we need you in the band full time?
Sort of. I mean, it's been a group effort the entire time because the EP was the debut recording. And, you know, to give a little context, I met the singer, Brian, pretty much just randomly at a bar, just kind of struck up a conversation with him. And this was at Waltz Bar in LA, in Eagle Rock. Shout out Waltz. It's like the coolest bar in the world. They got like old school pinball machines. It's really cool.
We have one of those around here.
It's the best. And yeah, just struck up a conversation with this guy. Brian is like, he's a really nice guy. And we started talking about music. And we exchanged numbers. And you're like, maybe we could work on something or whatever. And he sent me some demos. And this would be the demos for the EP. And, I'm a recording engineer. So like, sometimes as an engineer, you have to see the diamond in the rough. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And the rough in this case was the recordings, because the recordings themselves were like really bad. I mean, Brian's an incredible songwriter, but like it just sounded smashed together and harsh and crazy, But even through that, I absolutely like fell in love with this guy's music and the demos. Had like chills running up and down my spine from first play. I was like, this is so good. Like, and that was when I decided I want to work with this guy. I don't know how or why, but I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to make an EP,
Mm,
And so that's why I founded the label.
that's cool. Yeah, we got deeper into that than I wanted to off the bat there. But yeah, Brian, you said is lead singer, right?
Yeah, Brian's the lead singer. Yeah.
I said earlier he looks like a guy that I know in a band called University Drive and Cold. His name is Ed Kuzo.
Right.
Looks just like him. It's funny. But I want to get into all that. We'll get into that deeper. But where did you kind of grow up, and what kind of shaped you into what you're, into like the music and stuff like that?
Yeah. Yeah. Grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So Midwest, born and raised. I've always played music pretty much my whole life. Started playing the piano as a child and was actually classically trained. I played the cello and was a cello performance major in college.
Oh wow.
But I've always had this kind of open mind and, about music. I've embraced different things and always really into punk music. Like when I was young, I got to see Fugazi on the 13 Songs tour.
Hmm.
And I think I might have been a freshman in high school.
Okay.
And I mean, that was a life-changing moment, seeing that show,
Yeah.
to say the least. But yeah, I always had this kind of like nerdy side of music too, where I played classical music, and then later on I studied jazz in college and just was always interested in just about every kind of music. And so I played in a bunch of, subpar bands as a young lad, like a lot of people do. Many bands that aren't worth talking about, maybe. But that sort of got me getting to know a lot of people in the scene in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which was actually super vibrant when I was younger. There was a lot going on in the Midwest generally, and a lot of bands would come through on tour. And there was this other band, a Milwaukee band called Wild Kingdom. And Wild Kingdom made a lot of noise in Wisconsin and in Milwaukee. They were kind of like sort of punk adjacent. I wouldn't call them a punk band by any means. It was more like back then there was a lot of like ska and funk and rock kind of getting mixed up together. And so, Wild Kingdom opened up for the bands Fishbone and the Red Hot Chili Peppers, or very early on. And so it was like kind of that scene that Wild Kingdom was born in. But they had an absolute legendary live show. And yeah, they were local legends for
Hmm.
sure. And my one of my bands, the Elevators, had opened up for Wild Kingdom a bunch. And then fast forward a few years later, Wild Kingdom is breaking up, and the keyboard player Dave Cooley asked me to start something new, and that would be Citizen King.
It all comes together like it's supposed to, right?
Yeah, it just kind of fell into place, but I was really young at the time, and we had the dynamic of sort of like I was like the younger, less experienced person,
Hmm.
and they were like sort of like I kind of looked up to them like older brothers. So that was kind of how it started, anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what was that like when that kind of all came together? I mean, eh, that moment when that big song, what was that experience like? How did that all like? Because you were young back then, right?
Yeah, but we spent many years building up to that moment,
Hmm.
actually. Yeah, we built an audience the old-fashioned way, just like doing weekend warrior tours regionally, and we actually built up to a point where we were able to make a living off of music just by playing like locally and regionally, which is pretty incredible. But I'm encapsulating a long period of time in a couple sentences. That was like 7 years worth of grinding it out for
Hmm.
sure. Punk rocking it in a van and
Yeah,
just doing what you can to get by. Some of us had part-time jobs, but we were making money, so it was like it was a different time for sure.
that's when memories are made, right?
I have very fond memories of that time for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, we made some noise, and then there was major label interest, and this was back at a time when labels were doing the whole bidding war thing, and so we made enough noise that we ended up getting a bidding war between all of the major labels.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was a very interesting time.
What was that like? Because you already said like it's a different time now than it was back then. Um, and the music landscape is so drastically different, I feel like,
So
and we can
different,
kind of
yeah.
talk about that. You've experienced that side of it, and now what you're doing now, and bands that you worked with, obviously. But like, what's that? What is a bidding war like?
It was crazy. We had all of the major labels would split the budget for us to like basically fly to New York and then to LA, like flying to the coast to have meetings. And we were getting taken out for like $700 sushi dinners. I mean, it was ridiculous. And it's also the kind of thing that I don't think that happens anymore at all. Because this was a time when the major labels would invest
Hmm.
in a project before anything happened and before it was released, which is kind of the opposite of what it's like now. So we were very fortunate to be in that situation, and we spent some time kind of laboring over the decision, and we ended up signing with Warner Brothers.
Very cool. Who were some other bands on that label at the time?
I am actually not too sure.
Long time ago.
Yeah, it was like it was a long time. We were who was on the label was a band called Chibo Motto. I don't know if you remember
I'm not
them.
familiar. No.
We we kind of fit in with that band in a very odd way. They're sort of like an arty kind of hip hop sort of fusion sort of band, which you know the labels and the music world didn't really know what to do with Citizen King because we were kind of an oddball band. You know what I mean? Our style of music was not what was popular really at the time.
Right.
What was popular was alternative rock,
Hmm.
and that was just still exploding. Um, so yeah, it was a different time.
Billy Corgan from the Smashing Pumpkins, on his podcast said something about he feels that rock music was kind of I wish I remember what he said exactly, but it was kind of like almost like throttled a bit. He claimed that it was MTV's fault, I believe, and if I'm misspeaking, I apologize. And he even brought up the CIA too. I don't I don't know what it was, but um, he just said that kind of like that rock was kind of pushed aside to make way for rap. Did
Yeah.
you? Is that
Yeah.
accurate?
No, well, I'm pretty sure the CIA ruined rock music. But no, that was a shift that happened. I think this would have been a little bit later than Citizen King.
Okay,
Um, yeah, we were a little earlier on. That shift might have been right around 2000. I'm not really sure.
I think that's what he said. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, our style of music was kind of like, and credit to Dave Cooley, our keyboard player. He was really the mastermind behind the Citizen King sound. Um, he was like, we're going to start this new band. We're going to mix like samples and hip hop music with rock music and like some funk stuff and alternative rock. And so we had a DJ in our band,
Hmm.
the homie Malcolm Michaels, Old Man Michael, he goes by. Old Man Malcolm, excuse me.
What was your role in that
I play
project?
guitar.
Guitar. Cool.
Yeah.
I should have done the research before, but I like to do it organically and kind of fact find
Yeah,
on the
that's cool.
spot.
No worries.
But now you, so I've had the honor and pleasure of interviewing bands who some were one hit wonders, some were just massive in a certain time frame, the 90s or whatever it may have been, and they're not so much a blip on the radar these days. Um, and since you said it, you called yourself a one hit wonder. I'll ask you, and I hope this is okay, but like, what was that like to like experience that real high and then I don't know, I wouldn't call it a low after that, but like have that success and the radio play and
Yeah.
these people in a bidding war, and then that kind of going away.
It was a wild ride for us for sure. We made our record with Eric Valentine. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that name, but he
I
is
think it
an
sounds familiar, but
absolute legend of production. He's worked with, I mean, he did the Smash Mouth records.
okay,
He's worked with Queens of the Stone Age and Taking Back Sunday. He recorded the Songs for the Deaf record.
okay,
But in many circles in recording and engineering, Eric is highly respected. I mean, he's one of the best to ever do it. So I think one of the coolest things of the entire experience was that we made our record with Eric. That was just it was just incredible watching him work. I had never seen anything like that.
I was just listening to that album literally like a day or two ago.
Which one? Songs for the Deaf?
Yeah, yeah,
It's an
randomly.
incredible album.
Yeah,
Incredible album.
I'll never forget when that came out. Yeah,
Yeah, and Eric, so yeah, we took a year to make the record. I didn't know a record could even take a year, you know. I didn't know what kind of like I didn't know about the amount of patience and attention to detail that we would get into, you know. And looking back on it, I think my only regret is that I didn't sit with Eric more. I mean, most of the time he was like on the computer sort of working by himself, or, you know, there would be sessions where we were involved, but he did a lot of work on his own, and his work ethic was insane. I mean, he would work nonstop. And so it wasn't like a year because we took weeks off and we're, you know, chilling. It was a year of working like almost every day, literally. But it was mostly Eric.
yeah. It always amazes me how important guys or girls like that are to the whole process.
He was key to that record coming together the way it was. I mean, his ear for detail and his sonic palette and his mixing capability, but also, you know, he's like a music guy, but also a very deep in the engineering world. So he kind of has left brain, right brain
Hmm.
going on at the same time. incredible producer. It was such a privilege to work with him. That was a big highlight, you know. I would say that was the most positive thing, you know, that came from it.
Yeah, I talked to a lot of artists, and it's amazing how like producers like the attention to detail, like you said, it's just like it's crazy. And people hear music and they just think it's music and it sounds good or whatever, but they don't understand like what goes into it and how much time is spent on it and the tweaks that are
Yeah.
made. And I always find it kind of interesting when a band releases an album because they spend so much time with it, right? No one's heard it. It's like for a moment of time it's just yours, and then it gets released to the world and it's just kind of out there.
Hmm.
And it's just
That is a interesting feeling. Yeah. When you're kind of holding on to it and you're sort of attached to it, and then now everyone else can share it. You can
yeah.
feel it. It's weird.
What was that like? Having your music shared and listened to and loved and all that. Like, what was that like?
Yeah, again, it was a bit of a wild ride because okay, so we made the record and then there was a delay before it came out. But then once we dropped Better Days and the album finally came out, we toured for a year, like a full year with some breaks here and there. There were a couple breaks, but pretty much solid. We were touring for an entire year, which was really fun, first of all, you know, but also very exhausting. And we kind of didn't really fit in anywhere, you know, like
Mhm.
because we were considered a bit of a pop act on the label, and Better Days was pushed as a pop single, but we came from like a DIY punk scene, you know, and so we felt out of place in a lot of the places that we played. True story. We would open for like Britney Spears, you know, we opened for Britney Spears a few times. We'd play like pop music events. So there was that type of thing. But then there were also, you know, we toured with some amazing bands. Like we got to tour with Local H,
Okay.
which was really cool right around the Copacetic time. Um, we toured with Smash Mouth. Those are friends of ours too. Uh, yeah, the touring was a lot of fun. Everclear, didn't you have Everclear on the show?
I did. That was one of
Yeah.
my more embarrassing moments of this this podcast venture. I mispronounced his last name,
Oh, right.
and he
He didn't
quickly.
like that, huh?
I don't know if he didn't like it, but he was quick to correct me. And like, I don't know, like, you think that I would have heard his name said correctly in other interviews. Maybe I just didn't
Yeah.
pay attention when I was, watching things like that. But I had been saying it wrong in my head for years, years and
Right.
years and years. And like looking back on it now, I pronounced it Alexakis, and it's Alexakis.
Alexakis, right.
Yeah, and I like when I said it, and then he corrected me. I was like, "Wow, that's really dumb." And he was in a hotel room, so he had bad Wi-Fi connection, and like at one point, like he disappeared. I'm like, "Oh, this is over. He's not coming back." He came back, but
Well, I guess they can't all go smooth.
yeah, I mean, I'm not a professional. I just I go by the fake it till you make it type of thing. But
Me too.
I wouldn't say that. Um, but yeah, so
But yeah,
Everclear.
yeah. So we toured with a lot of cool bands, and it was exhausting for sure. You know, being on tour for a year, and then we had that classic sophomore slump problem. I'm not sure if you've heard about that,
Sure.
but
Yeah.
you can imagine. Yeah. Um, you know, a lot of bands they say you have like 10 years, 15 years to write your first record, and then you have like 4 months to write your second record. And so we kind of imploded on the second record and never made a second record. We started doing some stuff, but it wasn't happening, you know.
Well, back then too, weren't you like you probably signed up for a certain amount of records and then you had a certain amount of time to like you had to deliver, right?
Yeah, we were signed up for quite a few more records. I think technically we were dropped from the label in the end, which was the best outcome for everyone. But we also ended up recouping, which is not something a lot of bands can say, actually.
Hmm.
Because you probably know this, but when you get an advance for to make an album, that's money that you need to pay back, and it can
Right.
be hundreds of thousands of dollars. And we were really nervous we weren't going to make it back, but Better Days had some legs, and it still has legs. I
Hmm.
hear it all the time.
Yeah.
So I'm actually quite baffled by it because it seems to be an anomaly, that it's still around.
I mean,
People
a good
still
song's a
care
good
about it.
song, you know?
Yeah, it's a good song.
And
It's
the
a good
90s are
song.
coming back.
I hope
The
so.
90s are coming back. They are. They're here. They're back. But that's a lot of pressure though, too, right? Like,
I think that's ultimately what it was the self-imposed, but
yeah.
also, expectation from fans, the label, the management. I don't know where it came from. It was internal as well,
Hmm.
but yeah, you can kind of psych yourself out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what happened.
But what did all that teach you though? I mean, obviously there's a saying that I like to use. Um, you don't fail, you learn, like, one of those
Yeah, I
things.
love that. Yeah,
I coach like baseball and basketball for my
cool.
my son's little league team and shit like that. But you try and like, try and be positive and like, you're not a loser. You're learning,
The
right?
only way to get good at something is to fail at it first and be
Yeah.
bad at it. Yeah, I totally get that. It was such a different world for us. I what happened for me is I got interested in producing. So I was super inspired by Eric's work. And what happened was the label basically bought us a recording studio. We worked it into our recording deal
Hmm.
that we would have a facility with all the gear. And it was a lot of gear. And we had a really nice place in Milwaukee all set up. And we recorded a lot of the record there. I recorded the acoustic guitar to Better Days there in the hallway. It was an amazing facility. It was only around for like a couple years because yeah, once we so yeah, we worked it into the record deal that we would have all this gear and that we would have a studio. And the way that the contract worked out, we were able to keep the gear no matter what happened with the record deal, right? So the band breaks up and we've got all of this recording gear ready to go. We kind of just split it up. Our keyboard player Dave moved to California, and Malcolm and I set up a spot in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and started recording bands.
So that was kind of like just a seamless transition. Like, all right, this part
I
of
wouldn't say it was seamless, no,
no, okay,
but it was definitely where I wanted to go.
yeah,
I mean, it was tough, kind of picking up the pieces from that after it being so invested, but the path to me was clear. Like I want to make records. I want to produce. I think I can help bands make great recordings.
yeah. We'll talk about that part of your life now. Like, talk about moving into that role and how that's um, been a huge part of your life and how it might be different than actually performing or recording with a band like Citizen King. And obviously,
Yeah,
you have a new band now. We'll talk about that too. But
yeah. We'll get into that. Yeah. At first I didn't know what I was doing at all. Like,
none
like,
of us
like
do,
for,
right?
like for real. Talk about failing. Like, um, I need help from friends to set up mics and stuff and get tips from people. A lot of people come up in recording with a mentor, and I did have Eric, who I did learn quite a bit from, but I was learning on the fly very much. And the thing is that I had clients coming in while I was learning on the fly, so that was an interesting time. I was figuring it out.
Hmm.
real fast.
Baptism by fire, man. That's the best way.
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky that I had a studio and I could start recording people, you know.
Hmm.
Definitely. One of the first sessions I ever did, and this is an incredible first session. I was very lucky to be a part of it. Was I recorded a bit on the Jimmy Eat World Bleed American record.
I saw that. That's one of my favorite records of all time. I'm
It's an
glad you brought it up.
incredible album.
Yeah.
It's so good. And I mean, I recorded a very small piece on there, but it was literally the first vocal session I ever did.
Really?
Yeah. I was like, what is this? This is a preamp? How do you do this? Like, you're like, is anyone looking at me like trying to figure this out?
Yeah. That's funny.
But yeah, that would have been Davey Von Bolin from the band The Promise Ring,
Mhm.
who guested on the song A Praise Chorus on the Jimmy Eat World record. And I didn't even know who Jimmy Eat World was. And they were already making some noise, but this was long before their big hits.
Yeah.
So, but the Promise Ring guys had been touring with them, and they were good friends. And we had the same manager at the time, and so, you know, they hired me just to record that vocal. And I was like, I think that was my first session ever, which is that's a crazy first session.
Yeah. What's that like? Just they're hiring you for just that one vocal. Like that seems weird to me.
Well, it was done because it was done remotely,
Hmm.
right? So Jimmy Eat World, I believe Mark Trombino did that record, right? And I think I'm not sure what studio they were at, but I know they were from Arizona. And so they wanted it to be sent to them, right?
Hmm.
And so they basically sent an instrumental, or it was with the vocal. It was basically the mix and blank space for this bridge part to, you know, fill in the blank with the vocal, and then we sent them the vocal. So I didn't have anything to do with the production, really. I was just really hired to engineer that session. But there is a moment, there was a moment there where I was like working with Davey, and there was a moment where I knew like if we went to this one note and just held it out, it's the end of it where he goes, kickstart my rock and roll heart. Like, I was like, if he goes up there and then ends it right before, I think that'll be better. And I suggested that to Davey, and he was super down. And that's what you hear on the record. And I think that was one of those moments where I'm like, okay, yeah. So you're like giving feedback. You try to like make it better. And then, yeah, that's how it works.
I love that. Like I said, I have no musical talent, but I like to think, and this is supported by people around me, that I have a good ear for things that sound good. And a lot of bands that I've uh, been around, none of which are, I would say, national acts by any means. There were a couple that I think had potential, and specifically a band called Panacea that I think could have come out of our area after Breaking Benjamin did. Um, I would sit in like the car after the bar closed, and he'd be like, "Here's the song we're working on. I want you to hear it. I want to know what you think." You know,
Mm-hmm.
and I would like kind of give my feedback, and I would kind of say like, "What if you did this?" But I would never like be able to effectively communicate it with the appropriate language. Like, 'cause
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. I really don't. But I just think
I mean, it is that language is an interesting one. Being a producer and trying to communicate ideas and give feedback, you kind of have to be careful the way you approach it, you know?
yeah,
You can get any result you want if you approach it the right way. You
yeah,
know what I mean? But the other side of that is if you approach it the wrong way, you might lose the trust of the artist.
right. Can you differentiate sound engineer and producer for me?
Yeah, absolutely. So engineer is more the technical side of recording. So a lot of producers also have an engineer, or like if look, we're recording drums for Bandy. I go to a studio and there's a house engineer there, and he's a little more responsible for where the microphones are set up and making sure that all the tracks are in Pro Tools and the gear that's involved with the recording session. So it's more the sound of it, but it's also the technical side of the sound. And producer's a little ambiguous. It kind of depends on what genre you're in. You know, if you're like a hip hop producer, then you're making the beat, you know. If you're like an EDM producer, you're the artist basically. But in rock music, it's a little more of a, you're kind of overseeing the whole project and you're a little more creatively involved than the engineer. Like usually an engineer would work under a producer or
Okay.
with a producer, but the producer is kind of like in charge of the recording, so to speak.
Gotcha. Okay. And so your first recording is the Jimmy Eat World song. Take me after that.
Well, was recording a bunch of bands in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and had some really. I look back on that time quite fondly, actually, because there were some really cool projects that happened. I was sort of filling a void, I think. I don't think there were a lot of studios at the time. And so a lot of people come through just to hang, and a lot of people were getting some records done. And I worked on a record by a band called Seven Angels, Seven Plagues, which was an interesting one. They're like a hardcore metal band. And I I didn't know what was going on in hardcore and metal at the time. I was a little oblivious because I had just kind of come back from tour with Citizen King. And the drummer Jared was like, "Hey, can you record my band?" And I was like, "Sure, I'll record you. Here's how much it costs. Show up this day. Let's do it." And I didn't even know what I was going to be recording, you know. And I set up all the mics, got everything ready to go, and then the hammer fell, and I was just completely blown away by what I was hearing. I had never heard any music like that before in my entire life. Nowadays, I'm a fan of that kind of stuff,
Hmm.
but back then, I had no idea what was going on, and so they started playing, and my jaw just kind of dropped to the floor. But that was a fun record to be involved with. Other than that, I worked with a band called Paris, Texas,
Okay.
and that was an awesome project. Those guys are my friends. We did that record actually at Smart Studios. I don't know if you're familiar with Smart Studios.
I've heard the name before, but I'm not familiar.
So Smart Studios was Butch Vig's studio in Madison, Wisconsin. So Butch Vig, producer of Nirvana and member of Garbage, and I mean he's done
Yeah.
so many amazing records. Yeah, that was their studio, and it was kind of like it was a mecca of recording in the Midwest for many, many years. I did a few projects there over the years, but we did the entire Paris, Texas record there. Well, most of it. We did a lot of the vocals at my place, and then we mixed in California. But that was a really cool record. I'm super proud of my involvement on that album. And then another cool thing that I ended up doing was The Promise Ring. We did some demos for their album, which would be called Woodwater. So that would have been, yeah. So we basically, they booked like a month for us to just kind of work on stuff and just experiment because they were kind of looking to do something very, very different at the time than what they were doing. They were mostly like a guitar based band and, you know, just kind of a little more straightforward rock. But the stuff that we were working on, they wanted to experiment a lot. So yeah, we booked it for a month, and that was a really fun session because it was just, you know, we were throwing the kitchen sink at everything and just trying all kinds of different stuff. And it ended up being like a template for the record that they ended up recording, which they did with Stephen Street in
Okay.
England. Stephen Street was like produced the Smiths and stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, but they ended up using a lot of the ideas that we did in that session, and it was a really fun session because it was like, you know, when a band is trying to do something new, and you're trying to facilitate a new thing, then there's a lot of experimentation and creativity, and that was fun.
Hmm. And then I see you also had involvement with the Silver Sun pickups.
Yeah, that would have been a little later,
Hmm.
but can we get to that in a second?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because there's one more band I'd like to mention
Yeah.
that really important to me, and that would be Maritime. So Maritime is the band that formed when the Promise Ring broke up. So
Okay.
it's a couple of the people from the Promise Ring, and then they've had a few rotating members. But I produced the album We the Vehicles, and I'm just a big fan of that band, and I'm really proud of my work on that record. Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah. These are a lot of bands that I need to check out.
Yeah, I mean, some of these were kind of like, they're not household names, if you
Yeah.
will.
But that doesn't matter. That's what's so great about music. Like,
Yeah, you can dig deep
unfortunately,
and find
yeah,
find some stuff.
unfortunately, not every band puts out a hit that like today's term is viral, right? But
Right.
I mean, there's so much good stuff out there that unfortunately people don't get to hear.
Yeah, and I think I'm usually a fan of like kind of the underdogs too, you know what I
Yeah, of
mean?
course.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of how this whole podcast kind of came to be was because like I host a local radio show
Cool.
where I'm from, and it's an hour of just local bands. And this area, and I'm sorry to take away from what you're talking about, but
It's
I
cool.
think you'll appreciate it because it's just a lot of local artists that they're the ones they're out there either performing in clubs or that they're writing their own music and they're producing their own music and things like that. So it's like, I'm so proud, of these artists that are from here. A lot of are friends of mine, and I want people to hear it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of, James Barrett is a huge is such a nice kid, and I think super talented, and I think you might like him too.
I'll check it out. I'll put it on my list.
Yeah, James Barrett. He just released a new song a couple weeks ago. He's got a couple albums out. But yeah, super nice kid, super talented.
It
Um,
just feels so good to support a local scene or be a part of a local scene. I think people are craving that nowadays more than ever.
I hope so. In this area that I'm from, the Scranton Wilkes-Barre area, back in the day, we talked about this earlier. Like bands were making a living off
Hmm.
of performing, but
Yeah.
there were tons of venues to play at, and people were going out to see them.
Yeah.
And those times, um, I don't want to use a C word, but COVID, I think, kind of disrupted that a lot.
For sure.
And then also just venues, the lack of venues these days in our area that
Um,
is just not. Um,
But it's a tough business. It's just gotten really hard for clubs to stay afloat, and touring is pretty much not feasible for a lot of like the
yeah,
DIY scene. Is the numbers aren't working out anymore. Word on the street.
yeah. Well, I think too, it's and you said the word business. Everything has become such a business-minded thing, and I mean that's fair, right? Like you're not doing something to lose money, right? But like, oh man, if I had the money where I could just break even or afford to lose just a little bit, I would open a venue and tomorrow. Um,
Yeah,
just because there's there's enough bands to perform, but the amount of people to come out is just not.
yeah,
Well, I mean, COVID and just the fact that we have everything we need or want in the palm of our hands. It's just hard to get people out.
I think people are craving it more than ever.
I hope so.
That in-person experience. The screens, they get old. Good old-fashioned in-person is still a cool thing.
It's an amazing thing. I mean, I just get worried that this younger, back in my day, um, it's just you went out places because of who you might see, or maybe I'll meet a girl tonight, or whatever it might be. And I just don't think that happens because People can get food delivered to their house,
Yeah.
from their phone. I mean,
It's too
people have
comfortable. We're too comfortable.
yeah, people have 75-inch screen TVs. Like they have movie-sized televisions in their home. Like you can date via an app. You can gamble on an app. Like everything. Like there's no reason for people to leave their homes, which is
Yeah.
very disappointing. And I think again that goes to me like back in my day, and if I wanted to meet my friends, if I wanted to potentially meet a girl, you had to go out, you had to go do stuff, you had to socialize.
Hmm.
You look at you know this younger generation, they're more health conscious. They're not out there. They're not drinking as much as they used to, which is not a bad thing, right? But um, there's just less socialization than there was in the past. I feel like
Yeah.
it's weird,
Absolutely. Yeah, it is weird.
but I don't know how I got off on that tangent. I apologize.
No, it's an appropriate one. It's
Yeah,
happening.
yeah, it's it's weird. I don't know how we got there. I don't know how we got there.
Well, we're talking about, real life experiences, and yeah, where were we? I guess I was talking about Maritime,
Yeah.
which was a super fun project. And you had to ask about Silver Sun Pickups a bit, right?
Yeah, when we went back to some of the other bands that you were working with, because I don't know why I got into our local scene here and local entertainment, and
Well, dude, but I just like to highlight the Pennsylvania scene is popping right now.
dude, I mean, I always say, and I might be biased, but I always say that I would put this talent that we have in our little corner of the world up against anybody else. I just think it's super super good.
Dude, Pennsylvania goes hard for music for
Yeah,
sure. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of all the Philly bands that are doing the thing right now.
like who?
Uh, love the band Nothing. Are you
Okay,
familiar with them?
no,
Nothing
no,
and Super Heaven. Love
heard,
Super Heaven.
heard the name.
Aren't the Menzingers? Aren't they from Philly?
Menzingers are from yes, they are from Philly, but they originated from Scranton.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Lokes.
yeah, yep.
Yeah. Are you familiar with the name Will Yip?
Will Yip.
Studio 4. So Will Yip is a producer who has a studio called Studio 4 in Philly or the Philly area. And his studio has been sort of a hub for a lot of incredible bands. And he's been doing a lot of great work for many, many years now. He's worked with Turnstile. I mean, I think he worked on the new one, but he worked on a few Turnstile records, who are obviously a household name now. But Will does incredible work. I'm a huge fan of what he's done.
I'm following him
Okay,
on
there you
Instagram.
go. Yeah.
Um,
Shout out Will Yip.
did he work on a Menzinger song? Looks like
I think so. I don't I'd have to check the credits, but
he shared the new Menzinger's track,
he probably did
and
that
he said,
record.
yeah,
I
we
mean,
had
he's worked with his credits are crazy. Like
yeah,
he's worked with so many bands and he has a crazy work ethic. So,
Will Yip. Why am
there's a lot of music, very prolific.
I feel like why would I follow him? And I wouldn't follow just based on Menzinger. So this is weird. I'm wondering why I did.
He's out there, if you're not like a credits nerd like I am, like I like to know who produces records, but not everyone's like that, you know what I mean? Because
Yeah,
he's a producer. He's not. I think he's an artist a little bit. He writes a little bit, but he's really behind the scenes.
yeah.
So
I wonder why. That's weird. Huh. Okay. I don't know. I'll have to dig into that deeper when we're done.
yeah, so there's a lot of good music from Pennsylvania, and obviously Title Fight, right?
Yep.
Isn't that
Yeah.
from your area?
Yeah, I had Ned on. He was episode 100, maybe. It might have been. Yeah.
Saw the Ned episode, loved
Yeah.
it. I'm a big fan of Ned and Title Fight and Glitterer.
Yeah. I had an argument, and this might not be worth a conversation, but it's kind of fun. Are you familiar with the name AJ Jump?
No.
He's a drummer. He's been in a ton of different bands over the years. Really, really talented. He had a local club called Carl Hall for a couple years. I think COVID kind of, I shouldn't say COVID killed that. It was COVID and the landlord of the building, I think, tried to like raise the rent on the property, and it just didn't make sense anymore. But it was like an underground, like all ages venue, which was great. Um, did a bunch of things there. But he and I were out. This is Valentine's Day, actually. My wife and I went to see him play. He had like I don't want to say it's a jazz band, but maybe a jam band might be the better word for it. And so he got done early, and then we went to a place next door, and we were in a heated argument. Um, he's like, "Turnstile, man, they're the next name out of here. They're gonna be bigger than I don't know. I forget what he said, but I said, dude, like I love Turnstile. The station that I'm on plays them. I said, but like the world is so different now. I said, Turnstile will never be a name that's recognizable at like the Foo Fighters and Pearl Jam and all these other things. I said, the days of those bands, like those names and that longevity is over. He goes, no, no, Turnstile, they're gonna be something. And I said, you know what? I'll be surprised if there's still a band 10 years from now. He goes, no, you're full of shit. You're wrong. You're wrong. And I put a reminder on my phone from 10 years from that date to see if there's still a band. And not that I don't want them to be, but the industry is so weird now, and
I
people
it's
are.
sorry.
No, no, go ahead.
It's incredible to see that like a band like Turnstile can become as big as they are. It's
Hmm.
really, really cool. I mean, heavy music has come so far in recent years.
Yeah.
It's incredible to watch. Bands like Knocked Loose.
Hmm.
I mean, these bands are becoming household names. It's crazy.
They are, but my argument was they'll never be. I said I'll go over that group over there. There's like 8 or 10 people, and I said I'll go ask them how many people here know who Turnstile is versus Pearl Jam. And I said I guarantee, I bet you everyone in the group will know who Pearl Jam is. And I said maybe one person knows who Turnstile is. No, you're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong. So I go over and I'm like, hey, I'm sorry to bother you. How many people here know who Turnstile is? I think 2 people raised their hands. I said, how many people know who Pearl Jam is? Everybody raised their hand. One person was like, I know who you are. I listen to your podcast. I'm like, holy shit, like that's amazing. I had no idea. But I was like, that's how crazy it is. Like it just, I don't think,
I think I
um,
see what you're saying. Like a band can be super big, but it's still not a household name, right?
right. It's just not
Yeah.
like it,
We don't
it
have those iconic, huge acts.
yes,
There's just way more going on.
there's just so
And it's a
much.
different, yeah, it's a different climate for
And just
sure.
people are just kind of like, they hear it. All right, on to the next, 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 next. And it just doesn't stick like it used to. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
it's unfortunate. I mean, listen, I want Turnstile to be around for 30 years. I hope they keep making records for 30 years.
I don't think they're
But
going to stop anytime soon. So,
yeah, I hope not. But I just, I, I hope I'm right so I can just like say I'm right in 10 years,
yeah,
but I also hope I'm wrong, if that
right.
makes sense.
We'll see
But
where it's headed.
yeah, it's just, and you can speak to that too. I mean, like you are, you were part of a huge movement in the 90s. And you see what it's like today. You're working with different bands and you just see how the world works. Like, I mean, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think people are still going to be craving that human experience more than anything. Now things are getting so weird with AI and
Yes.
whatnot.
Yes.
You know, I think the in-person thing and the real thing is going to become so rare that that's going to be the most special thing you can do, you know, is to show up in person and actually play.
I think you're right for sure. And I think there's a generation that I mean everything's they always say it's cyclical, right? Um, I mean records, vinyl made a comeback how many years
Yeah.
ago? And it's still a thing. Um, I never understood it or got into it as a consumer. Um, people, my friends will try and tell me that it sounds better, and you could probably speak to this more than I can, but like I don't imagine it does, right?
It
It's
does by a little bit, you know, compared to the digital files and the streaming services for sure. I think there's value in the experience too, you know,
the
pulling
experience.
it
Yes, I
out.
think there's something special
But
about
there's something cool about
yes,
collecting, you know.
yes,
I used to collect. We did that with Citizen King. We were, you know, crate diggers as it used to be called. Maybe
right.
it's still called that. You know, searching for samples through dusty record crates. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? That was a thing that we used to do. And so I used to collect vinyl, but I stopped. I made a decision. I'm like, I don't have room for this shit, you know. Um, it's kind of a it's just a lot of stuff. My friends who do it have racks and racks and racks
Yeah,
of records and they just stack up. I still think it's pretty cool though. You know, I do miss listening to music on vinyl.
there's definitely, I think, a an experience involved. There's a warmth of the sound and things like that. But I, I used to listen. I used to go and buy CDs. I've never. I own a select few records on vinyl. I guess that was probably when vinyl kind of came back full force. Just to, I guess, just to do it. But back in the day, I was in a record store back when the releases were on Tuesday. Um, but then when they moved to Fridays, every Friday, and I would just go in. I was spending $200 a month just buying random stuff. I wouldn't even go in there with a mission. I would just like I'm gonna go in. I'll buy based off of uh, art. Um, I would go into the used section and just go through stuff and buy it.
They had to
Just
take chances back then.
yeah,
You know, you'd be like, hey, this looks cool. I don't know.
yeah. And I did that, and I had a kid, and I'm like, spending $200 a month is financially irresponsible.
Hmm.
Um, but but yeah, I mean, there's something special about those moments. I mean, I remember I have fond memories of walking into um, it's called Joe Nardon's Gallery of Sound, and I would walk in and I would hear stuff playing over the speakers, and I'd be like to the clerk, "Who's this? This sounds great." And they tell me like, "All right, I'll buy that." I found Jack's Mannequin that way.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
her name was the girl working. Her name was Brianna, and I said, I'm sorry, no, this is a different moment." I went in there and I just said, "Hey, I'm looking for something new. What do you recommend?" And she told me Jack's Mannequin, and
Hmm.
I uh, I bought it, and I've been a fan ever since. I got to see him perform live at Ocean's Calling last summer.
Cool.
John Mayer was one of the. I heard it over the speakers. I said, "Who's this?" He said, "John Mayer," and that's how I found John Mayer. You know, those are special moments. Like I have so many albums and music tied to specific points of my life.
Yeah.
Um, whether it was a girl I was dating or a group of friends I was hanging out with or whatever it might be. Like I have this weird thing where I could tell you if I have to own the CD, granted, but I could tell you almost within a week, sometimes within a day, in some cases like the exact date of when records were released. Very useless knowledge, doesn't matter, but like it's cool to me. Um, it's just music's so special in my life and moments of my life, and meeting my wife and vacations and all that kind of stuff.
I
It's
hear you,
just
man.
incredible. Yeah,
There's nothing like it.
there's nothing
It's
like it.
everything. It's everything.
I mean, you hear like music saving people's lives. Like it's such a powerful thing, and to be involved with it, I can't
It's like
imagine what
voodoo
that's like.
magic, you know?
Yeah, yeah, it's It's something. So it's so cool that you've been able to, keep music as such a important part of your life and a career, right?
Yeah, well, it's a tough habit to break, and because nothing really gives you fulfillment in that specific way, And once a musician, you're kind of always a musician, I think. For me, I've just always wanted to make another record, be it with someone else or with a band that I'm working with. I'm just, I love being in the studio, and there's something really special about finishing something and being able to hear it back. It's an incredible feeling.
Well, talk to me about the record label.
Yeah, so the label Yardlights Records was founded again to put the Bandy EP out. So that would have been in like 2019. And it's pretty much just been Bandy up until now. So yeah, we had the EP come out in 2019, and the LP just dropped a couple months ago at the end of January. We did a bunch of singles leading up to that, but I'm just now starting to work with other artists. So I have the my second artist is now coming out next week. Actually, he is an artist by the name of Rod Alonzo, and we kind of met each other online and had a sort of mutual appreciation for a lot of different music. And I fell in love with his music. I love his work. He's been putting out music for some time now, like for like 20 or so years, maybe more. So he's got a lot of experience. And so we have a song coming out next week. It's called Too Late. And it was produced and written by Rod Alonzo and mixed by myself here. And it's coming out on Yardlights Records. So this is my first venture into having another artist on the label, which is pretty exciting.
So you basically have two artists on the label?
So far, yeah, but
Okay.
there's talk of others as well. Now the label is like, for me, it's a passion project,
Hmm.
and I just like having a platform where
Hmm.
I can support an artist. And again, it started with Bandy. So yeah, the context of the EP, I was really just producing and sort of label owner when we did the EP, you
Right.
know? And I love learning about things. So it's been fun to learn about marketing and, social media and all that, how to support an artist. I found that I really, really enjoy it,
Hmm.
even though it's a lot of work.
Yeah. So what do you do for artists under your label?
So, so far it's been the production has been a collaboration. So, in the case of Bandy, I do all the producing and mixing. In the case of Rod, I'm only mixing. But I think that's a theme that'll probably continue is that um, you know if there's an artist that I want to work with and we need sort of a reason to collaborate, then I can put it out on the label and then maybe mix or maybe produce or whatever. But that could change. I could start doing, artists that I'm not producing as well, and I'd be stoked to do that. But I have to manage it kind of slowly, and I just want to make sure I'm able to support what it is that I'm releasing well. So
And how do you go about getting new artists on it?
it's total per case basis.
Okay.
I'm not really like I'm not actively looking for
Sure.
that kind of thing. If something kind of comes my way and it seems to make sense, then. But I think a lot of the records that I've made have always been made between friends, and so there's a friendship aspect to music
Sure.
that doesn't get talked about enough. I mean, we hear about the professional side, but to me, like making records is something you do with friends. And
Hmm.
if you're doing it with someone who isn't your friend, by the time you're done with the record, they should be your friend,
Right.
or they will be your friend. It's likely because you're going to be working close together. I'm sure, the opposite can definitely happen as well.
Yeah.
But in my estimation, it's always been, yeah, a thing that happens among friends. So I'm happy to have a platform to be able to collaborate with more friends,
Yeah.
make more friends. So
What are your goals with the label in general?
basically to keep releasing music. And I also have, I've been getting interested in this podcast thing. So I have a podcast that I'm working on now too. And so it's kind of, it's the labels podcast.
Right.
We just got started with it. So filmed the first episode last week with Rod. And so I have a series, it's called Backyard Breakdowns.
Okay.
And basically, I don't think the podcast is going to be exclusive to this series, but I'm really excited about the series because what it's going to be is like an interview, much like this, but then we also open up the recording session and the computer, and we can go through things and sort of talk about the production, and they can ask me questions about the production and vice versa. So it's also a little bit of like an education thing
Sure.
around production stuff.
Have I seen you post some videos of that already, kind of?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I started a YouTube channel last year and did my first YouTube video for a Bandy song. So it's basically a long breakdown of the production of the Bandy song Figured Out.
Yeah.
And so I've been, kind of releasing little clips from there. That was a big learning experience for me. And yeah, again, I'm just kind of getting into it now, but I'm excited about the Backyard Breakdown thing because it's just a lot of musicians are now looking for content.
Hmm.
It's a big theme with musicians. Like, oh, I got to make content and I don't have enough, and people pressure you to make more and all that stuff. And I think some of the best content is about the behind the scenes of how it was actually made.
Sure.
That's the kind of stuff I'm super curious about. Like, I love that type of content on YouTube. I'm a huge consumer of that, like production breakdowns and interviews with producers and stuff. I love that stuff. And so I want to start doing that to share what I know, but also to just kind of spread the news about the label.
Yeah. I always say like the internet's such a double-edged sword, right? And in this case, it's such a great thing in that, you can the information that's available to all of us is literally at our fingertips. We didn't have that back in the 90s where it's like, oh, I want to learn how to do X, Y, or Z.
It's incredible
You
what you
know?
can learn
Yeah.
nowadays. Yeah.
And it's cool that you're like doing this like informative educational type thing.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It's also because I've been involved in music education for many years now as well. So I mentioned that I went to school for music, and
Hmm.
I've always been kind of insatiably curious about music. But I've also had a few jobs teaching music at various schools in LA and elsewhere. I taught for 6 years at a school called Icon Collective, which was sort of the stuff of legend. It unfortunately closed last year based on financial stuff, but
Sure.
this place was a beloved music school. The students loved this place. It was very much a community, not just like a school, but a community of people who are curious about music and want to learn about music. And Icon was incredible. It grew really fast. I think it was around for about 20 years, and it grew really fast because a couple people who went to the school early on became very successful in the EDM world. And so you had like every wannabe dubstep kid in the country wanted to go to the school, which was really had it had a bit impact on the culture and why it was such a fun place to work. But I'm really grateful for my time there. I learned a lot and really enjoyed. Just really enjoy teaching, generally speaking. I'm also teaching now at California College of Music and a couple other places. I love teaching music.
Yeah, I always say people are like put on this earth to do certain things. Maybe it's a musician to create music and have an impact on that way in people's lives, teachers, whether it's, in school or, musically like you're doing now. Um, we need that, and I wish
We do.
my so I look back, my mom always pushed me, she wanted to push me into like trying an instrument. And I wish, hindsight's 2020. And I wish I would have, her approach was, I think, was the wrong way. She approached it as like, why don't you take banjo lessons? And to me, that wasn't sexy.
To me
Like,
too, just for the record.
right? I'm like, banjo lessons. Like that doesn't sound like that. That sounds like I should be on a porch in the country with a piece of wheat in my mouth. And I was more interested in sports, baseball, basketball. And I wish she would have said, John, look at your dad, look at me. We are, dad's 5'9", I'm 5'6" or 5'7", whatever. Basketball is not in the cards for you. Um, Baseball, like you're like those things aren't going to be a thing that you're going to be able to do forever, whereas music could be. Um, so I think her presentation was a little off, and I joke with her about that. I'm like, you made me take a bath when I didn't want to. You made me go to bed when I didn't want to. You couldn't make me like pick up guitar or at that, even banjo, like whatever.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
it's never too late,
see, I appreciate that, and I
Well, yeah,
say
I
this.
mean, there's like there's a lot of value in playing an instrument, even if you're not gonna even have a career or do anything serious with it.
I know, I
I'm sure
know,
you're aware, but like, there's a lot of interesting research about how good it is for your health,
sure,
actually. Like,
yeah,
I think they say that when someone plays an instrument, it lights up every area of your brain, and I think there's some people who think that it could help with cognitive decline.
sure,
I mean, for me, just playing an instrument it's like my favorite thing to do. I don't have to be in a band. It's a little more fun in a band,
sure.
but I don't need to be playing in a band to do it. Just give me a guitar and it's such a wonderful thing to do with your time, even like totally disconnected from any goals, you know what I mean? Just to
Right.
be in the moment and play music is so good for you. It's good for your soul, it's good for your brain.
I don't doubt any of that. And people who have told me,
Yeah.
I bring this up a lot on this show, and everyone says the same thing. It's never too late to learn. Blah blah blah. And I'm like, listen, my time, it's at least at this moment of my life is that ship has sailed. A full-time job, wife, two kids, baseball practice, basketball practice, dance class, all these things. I do this. Um, there's not enough time in the day at this moment in my life
I
to
do
try and
understand that.
to
Yeah,
try
I
and
get
pick
it.
up a new thing.
Like,
But
yeah,
maybe,
you gotta make the time, you know.
yeah, maybe when, maybe my kids get older and uh they like, they're less dependent on me. I'll need a
Mm-hmm.
hobby, and then I
Hmm.
could I could explore it then. But I would say at this point right now where I'm at, unfortunately it's not there.
I understand.
But I appreciate what you're saying. Absolutely. I mean, I can agree with that 100%.
It's just good for you, you
Yeah.
know? It's just fun. It's an enjoyable activity.
They say there's this thing recently about cursive writing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, some schools don't teach it anymore, and I actually posted on social media just saying like, hey, like, what are your thoughts on schools teaching or not teaching cursive? And there's so many people against it. It's not necessary to teach kids how to you know balance a checkbook or taxes or whatever it might be versus cursive. And I didn't care either way. Like my kid does go to school and his school does teach cursive. I didn't care. I didn't have an opinion one way or the other. I just was curious. And but people were sharing stuff like for it, and it was a lot of the stuff. Someone just shared it with me today, actually. And this I posted this like maybe a month or two ago. How it does trigger things in your brain and it lights things up
Yeah,
by
I
learning
could see
cursive.
that.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and I think yeah, it can't hurt, right?
Absolutely.
But
Yeah.
yeah, but we're not here to talk about writing in cursive. But you triggered me with the lighting something in your brain
No,
and
yeah, I know what you're saying. There's something to writing things down that's supposed to be really good
yeah,
for memory too, right?
yeah, always, yeah. I mean, whether you're writing cursive or not, writing this stuff down is important. That's how we took notes in school, right?
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
know, but talking about Bandy, I mean, I love this project. It's
Oh, cool. Thank you.
yeah, it's very indie. There's like I think about certain soundtracks that this could be applied to.
Cool.
Um, yeah, talk to me about Bandy and what your future musical endeavors kind of look like.
Well, yeah, like I said, the album came out a couple months ago. So we built up we did a bunch of singles leading up to that. So we've been kind of trying to promote leading up to the release of the album for quite some time. It's been like a couple years. We're kind of locked into making content all the time now, which is, what people do these days,
Hmm.
It's sort of the current way of promoting. We're in a groove now where it's just kind of we're just kind of cruising with it, you know what I mean?
Can you?
Um
I'm sorry to
yeah.
cut you off, but can you talk to me about since you kind of lived in both worlds, Citizen King with in the 90s versus the release of music now.
Yeah.
Talk about releasing singles and every 6 weeks and these waterfalls and all this kind of stuff. Like, what are your thoughts and opinions on you know back then versus now, or
Sure.
what are your likes, dislikes, or whatever it might be?
Yeah. Well, it is interesting having the perspective of doing both
Hmm.
because there is a lot of musicians nowadays are kind of begrudgingly doing the content thing, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
I think people kind of don't want to do it, and
they
so
don't.
there's like a resistance to it. Like I just want to play music,
Yeah,
and I totally understand that. I didn't get into music to be sitting on a screen and cooking algorithms and all this stuff. But having had that major label experience, I've also realized that, the other side of that is actually not that fun either. you know, like, I mean, with Citizen King, we had to do like top 40 radio interviews at like 6 in the morning. You know what I mean?
hmm
And there were a lot of things that we didn't want to do to promote our music that we were kind of forced to do basically because the label wanted us to do. And so, the other side of that is, you mean I get to make my own stuff for the, you know what I mean? I'm empowered to do this myself without
Right.
relying on anyone, you know? Yeah, there is a little bit of an obligation, and, to make noise, you have to be really consistent, and that can be exhausting,
It's
but
daunting.
it's a lot. But I try to look at it like, you're making little art videos for your music. How cool is that?
Yeah,
I mean, that you couldn't do that 20 years ago, and somebody
yeah,
might hear it,
you're right.
So that's pretty cool. But yeah, we're probably not going to be touring anytime soon based on some like family situations for the band. So we're going to keep continuing doing the content, and we have some local shows that we'll be playing. We got another one coming up in June, and I'm hoping that the band plays a little more regionally. But right now we're kind of just doing this thing. We are going to do a backyard breakdown for a Bandy song coming up. That'll be the second episode of that, and we're going to do the Bandy song "Slow Down,"
Okay.
which is the title track from the album "Slow Down."
Hmm.
And I'm pretty excited about that because making that song was an epic journey, and there's going to be some cool stories told about it, you know?
Right. That's cool.
Yeah.
Now, how would you describe the sound of Bandy for anyone hearing that band name for the first time?
Boy, it's hard because I don't know if you noticed, but we're really all over the place genre-wise, which is maybe a modern luxury. I think you can do that a little more. People just do it, so we're just doing it. You know what I mean? But we have some kind of faster, kind of garage punk kind of stuff, and then we have some like more chill kind of shoegaze stuff, and then there's one song with acoustic guitar. So it's hard to put it into a genre box necessarily. But one thing that people have said to us that really resonates is they say that it's like California cruising music.
Okay.
And I
I
can
can get
get with
behind it.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
can get
like
behind
that. I
that.
like that I like that explanation. I could just see kind of cruising the PCH in a
Mhm.
convertible. It's that kind of music.
Yeah. Is that what you want people to feel when they hear it?
I think that's what we were feeling. You know
Okay.
what I mean? I think that's what we feel. And the cover of our album, I don't know if you've seen it, but it's derived from a photo that clearly shows sort of the mountains of Southern California.
Yes.
And like basically, if you've ever been to Santa Monica or Malibu, it's
I
like
have not.
that's the view. Like
Okay.
when you're in Santa Monica and you look north and west, you just see those mountains and then it kind of meets the sea. So it's a California vibe. You know what I mean?
Yeah, love that. Is this something different than anything you've done before?
Boy, every project is so different. I've done a lot of guitar based music, so that's kind of a familiar thing for me is working with guitars and like rock bands. Um, I guess the difference is that I'm in the band.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Which is a little different. So I'm intimately involved in pretty much everything that happens with the band. And I produced and mixed the record right here in my studio.
Nice.
So that's one of those double-edged swords too. I get to make all the decisions, but there's no lifeline. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah. I mean,
I need a life raft sometimes, and
yeah. I
there's
got
nothing there. You know what I mean? So finishing the album was, yeah, that was a hero's journey, I would call it. It took 5 years to finish the record.
it's a long time.
That was a long time. Yeah. To our credit, we weren't being lazy. A lot happened during that
Sure.
time. So, you know, we released the EP in 2019. It would be only months later that the pandemic happened.
Right.
And so that's kind of when we started making Slow Down, but we didn't really know that we were making it. We were just kind of like stuck in lockdown and we were trying to figure out a way to still continue to make music. And the funny story about the album is that like God, we had no idea what we were doing like for years. Like we were just like, let's make an EP. No, let's do a single. Let's just release singles. Let's do an album. No, I changed my mind. Let's make an EP. So, a lot of times you make a record, you're like, okay, we're making an album. It starts now and we're going to ideally be finished in this amount of time. We had no plan whatsoever. And so the first few years were just like kind of chipping away at stuff, but it wasn't too serious. And a lot of life stuff happened. Our singer had two kids in the course of making the album.
That'll do it.
That'll do it. Um, my mom passed away,
Oh, I'm
so
sorry to hear that.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, so there was all of that. So there were a lot of things that slowed down the process for sure.
Yeah,
And then, we have lives outside of music, so it
sure.
wasn't like kind of like going all in. It was more like doing it when we can, but doing it consistently and over the long period of time. And it was a long period of time. Things really started to pick up when I built the studio. So I built the studio in 2023.
Okay.
And as soon as this room came together, that's when it was like, okay, it was go time at that point because we could really hear what we were doing. And once I started really settling into mixing in this room, it took some test mixes, but once I started grooving, it all started coming together.
Nice. Well, I think it's a great album.
Oh, I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, and that, we talk a lot about, back then versus today and, dropping singles and, all that kind of stuff. Like I think it's cool in the sense that it feels like you get more new music from your favorite artists
Yeah.
more often, right? Back in the day, you had to wait 2 years. Now, I also like the 2 year process because when it came out, it felt like something special. Like it was
Yeah.
like I remember like waiting that long and like the album dropping on a Friday, and then I'd buy it, but I wouldn't listen to it until like a week later when I was going on vacation or whatever it might be. I wanted it to tie it into something special, but like it was like a more of a just like a moment, right?
Hmm.
But I also think like when you drop these singles too, like let's say one doesn't do that well, guess what? That's over, that's done with, and you're releasing a new one 6 weeks later that maybe people love and people forgot about the dud. And I'm saying dud is like people's opinions that who don't matter really, right? But like it's just kind of a different experience.
Yeah, we've been trying to embrace it. I think when we did the EP, we were didn't really know what we were doing in terms of promotion. We had some shows, we did a couple singles, but once we started promoting the singles from the LP, we were like trying to like really embrace the whole content thing and trying to give the release the support that it deserves, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you've had a career.
I guess you could say that, huh? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm 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 always looking for, new music to work on, and I have some new things in the works too. People that I'm going to be working in the next year. So still excited, still stoked to be making music and be in it, you know?
Yeah. What are the biggest differences between the 90s and today?
For music
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
well, you may not know this side of it, but these days a lot of people make recordings at home.
Hmm.
I mean, you probably know that,
Yeah.
but you may not know like the inner workings of how that impacts the music. So like nowadays when I'm working on stuff, I think it works best if I'm able to engineer everything myself, but that's not always the case, especially with mixing. And when I'm mixing things, I'm oftentimes mixing things that were recorded at home on, a limited amount of gear and maybe with a limited amount of recording knowledge, you know? And so it's a different challenge making records now than what it used to be, you know? And that's kind of a technological shift in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, it's cool that there's so much good music nowadays. I mean, that's one of the positive things. It's a little overwhelming.
Yeah, I think it's
It's coming
positive,
at you
and
all the time.
it's like how as a musician do you break through the noise? It's like podcasting. There's every
Yeah.
idiot, I'm one of them, has a podcast. This is not not talking to you, but like all you need is a microphone and a computer, like right? Like yeah, I'm a podcaster, right? But like how do you break through that all that noise? And it's like not that it was easy back then because it's probably harder in a different way.
Hmm.
Um, but it's like how do you break through all the noise today when there's so much because it's so easy to do in your bedroom and put up
Yeah.
on Spotify.
Well, I can't really say I've cracked that code for
Yeah.
sure, but for me, the approach is that I kind of view making music as a practice,
Hmm.
you know, and it doesn't matter if I'm helping a client or if I'm in the band or whatever, or if I'm just screwing around and just trying to come up with ideas. I'm always working on some kind of music, and it's just kind of built into my life that way. And then I think when you kind of view it as a practice, you're not really worried about breaking through. I mean,
Right.
breaking through would be cool. I'm super into that actually. Like let's go. Let's make it
Yeah.
happen. But again, like you said, it's hard, and to make it like contingent on breaking through. Like is your artistry contingent on breaking through? Like are you only going to do it if it blows up when it's next to impossible? Well,
Right.
that's not a good attitude, you know. What are you doing it for?
Right.
You know? I mean, I think you do it for the passion.
Yeah. And the art and the process.
Also the shared experience. It's
Yes.
really fun to share music and put it out. There's something really special about that. And playing live is also has its own thing too.
Yeah. Um, well, dude, I mean, I'm looking forward to keep following you. Um, I hope
That's
Bandy
awesome.
continues to do well. I hope you know you have some shows and stuff like that, like in your local area. Um, but you've done it all. You've
Done
had
some.
yeah you've had you've but you've experienced so much over the course of
I've
your
been really fortunate,
yeah
you know. Yeah, I have been. I feel grateful to have experienced so much in music. It's
yeah.
been a ride.
Well, where should people follow you?
You can follow the label at Yard Lights Music, and that's the same as the YouTube channel, Yard Lights Music. Lots of YouTube stuff coming out soon, and there'll be this backyard breakdown thing. Is I'm really excited about it. It's just something that I consider fun. You know, is like talking about music and going into these sessions and like sharing how things were made. I just love that kind of stuff. So I'm excited to share it.
Very cool. And what about Bandy?
Bandy's going to be doing the thing. We have tons of content rolling out. We're going to be doing some more shows, and no plans to make another record just yet, but that's because we literally just released this one. I don't think the next one, if is going to take as long. I hope. That's the
Less than
plan.
5 years? Yeah.
Yeah, I think we can get it done in under 5 years. So that
Good.
should be possible. But yeah, there'll be more music happening
Cool.
for sure.
Well, dude, thank you so much for reaching out. I love this conversation. Like I said, I'm going to continue following you, and I wish you the best of luck with everything.
Thank you so much, Popko. I really appreciate you having me.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. Like I said, I'll be in touch.
Yeah, that's awesome.
All right, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
See ya.